Hi and welcome to Programming with Rains. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can build this amazing counter application step by step. So let me show you how it works. Basically, we have three buttons here and each of these three buttons have their function. We have the plus button, which increases the number. We have the minus button, which reduces the number, and we have the reset button, which sets the number to 0. And you will notice that when we go above 0 to positive numbers, the number turns into green. And when we go below 0 to negative numbers, it turns into red. And when we click on the reset button, we come back to 0. So basically, this is how the counter app functions. So we can be able to increase our numbers, reduce the numbers, and of course, reset the numbers. So let's jump right straight in building. I'm excited and I hope you should be excited too. Okay, so basically, let me minimize this and I'll come over to VS Code. That's what I'll be using. Here in VS Code, I have a folder open. Here's a folder. I created a folder and created 3 files in it. So these 3 files, basically we have an index.html, we have a styles.css file which is empty, app.js empty, and the index.html as well empty. So we are going to do everything by ourselves. So in the HTML file, let me start by putting the HTML markup. So in VS Code, you just need to type HTML:5 and press tab. This is going to generate the HTML5 markup for you. So here we can just change the title. The title, we want our title to be counter app. Okay, so for the body, we want to first of all have a container which is going to contain our application. So we will use a div and give it a class of container. And this container, we want to have a sub-container. We want to have a sub-container which is going to contain the application, and we will name it counter container. Name it counter container, and in this sub-container, we now have to write the code for our application. So I will need an h1 tag to write the heading. So the heading will be counter app. Okay, so I'm going to open this with live server so we can see what we are doing while we are doing it. So if you don't have live server installed, you just have to come over to the extensions tab. You search for live server, and this is it, the first one here. If you don't have it installed, you have to install it. I already have it installed, so I don't need to install it again. But if you don't, you can go ahead, install it, and restart VS Code, and you can come back and continue. But since I have it installed, I'll just go ahead and open it. So to open live server, I just need to right click and click on open with live server, and that is it. My application now opens with live server. So I'm going to minimize it, and here you will see that our H1, our title, is already showing. So our title is counter app in our counter container. So apart from the title, we want to have a span, literally where our counter is going to display. We need a span where the number is going to display. So I want this span to be large, so I'm going to put it in an H2 tag. So H2, and I want it to be in a span tag, so it will be flexible. So I will initialize it to 0. So when I save, you see this is it, 0 here. And let me give this span a class of, I think, count. Yeah, give it a class of count. And below the count, we want now to have the 3 buttons we need. And it would be nice if we put these buttons in a div. So I'll put div.buttons. Yeah, and in this div we will need to have 3 buttons: the increase button, decrease button, and the reset button. So button with a class of decrease, and the decrease button is going to have the minus sign, and we need the next button with a class of reset, and the reset button is going to have the text reset, and for the third button dot increase, the button with the class increase, which is going to have the plus sign to increase. So if I go ahead and save it, there it is. We have our three buttons there: the minus button, reset button, and plus button. So with that, we already have our HTML set up. So now we can go ahead to style it. And before styling it, we have to link our style sheet to the HTML. So here in the head tag, before the title, we have to put the link. In VS Code, you can just type link and press tab. So it's going to generate this for you. So the link, the style sheet, and here we have to put in the path, and it is styles.css. The name of our CSS file is styles.css. So we have to put the name of our file here in order to link it. So I'm going to save, and I'll head over to the styles.css, and we can start styling. First, we are going to get rid of the default style browser styling by putting margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing border box. Okay, so as you can see, it's nice now, so we can put in any style we want. So I'm going to make the HTML, I'm going to set the font size for all the HTML text to be 10 pixels, since I want to be using rem. So I would like for all the fonts to have a fixed size of 10 pixels. Then from there I can use rem to put any kind of size I want for the elements. So aside from that, we can begin with let's begin by styling the container. So .container, the container here, we have a large container, we gave it a class container, so we can start styling it from there. So let me reduce this. Okay, so the container, and the style we want to give, we first of all want to center the application, we want to make it centered. So in this container, which contains the whole application, we will give it a display of flex, justify content, center, and with that, if you click save, you will see our content is centered, but we want it to be also centered right here. So for it to be centered down here, we have to say align items center. But if we save, you will see that it is not going to come down because our container does not have a height. In order for the align item center to work, the container you're using the flex on must have a height property. So if you go ahead and assign a height property to this container, height, we want it to be 100 view height, and if we save, you will now see that our content is centered on the screen. It is centered in the browser. So we also want the font size to be 1.5 rem, so it will be very visible. And we also want the text to be centered, so we will use text align center, and now everything is centered, which is nice and cool. And also we need a background color for the container, so I'll give it a background color of I think I'll give it this hash 191A19. I think that would be okay. Okay, so that's the background color of the container, and so we have the background color of our container. So now we are going to start styling the next component, which is this container, this counter container, the container which contains our counter. So here it will be counter container. Okay, so we are going to give it a background color of #52734D, and I'll save it. And that's our background color. We gave it this color right here. Okay, so we now, apart from that, we have to give it a padding of 1 rem top and bottom and 2 rem left and right. So if we save that, we see that we have padding right there, and we have to give some radius to the border. I don't like it looking sharp, so I want to curve it a little. So I'm going to use border radius for that. Border radius, and I will set it to 1 rem. And when I save, now it's looking good and clean, nice and clean. So we are going to, so since the container is already styled, now let's go ahead and make the buttons larger. So I'm going to target the buttons. I'm going to just target them by the elements. So button, which will target all the buttons in the app. So I want all the buttons to have a padding of 0.5 rem top and bottom and 1 rem left and right. So if I save, you see the buttons increase a little, and we want the font size of the buttons to be 1.5 rem. Okay, that increased a little, I think, yeah. And also I want the cursor to be a pointer, so when we hover over it, when we hover over it, we will have this good pointer finger, yeah. And we want also the border to be known, the border radius of the buttons to be 0.5 rem, and we want the font weight to be bolder. Okay, so this way we can now see it very well. So, but for some reason our buttons are not quite visible, so I think I'm going to increase this count here. Let's first of all increase the count here. So I'm going to target the counts by saying .count. Since we gave it a class of counts, let me go to the HTML. We gave the number a class of count. So I'm going to say count. I'm going to give it a font size of, I think 4 rem will be good. Okay, that's it. So now the number is large enough, and I want the color to be white. So I'm going to give the color of hash. Yeah, make the color white. And also for the buttons. Okay, so now we have to target each of the buttons. And the first button we are going to be targeting will be the reset button, which we gave it a class of reset. And the background color was white, I think, yeah, white. And the font weight, we want to make it 500, so it is not going to be this thick. So 500, yeah, I think it's good. And we are going to give it the color. I want the color I want the color to be, I think this one here will do, hash 91191A19. Yeah, so nice, the color. So let me increase the font size of the buttons to 2. Okay, that's good now. So I finished with the reset button. So now to the increase button, dot increase, give it a background color of hash 49FF00. Okay, and for the decrease, and I think for the decrease button, give it a background color of, I think hash 8E0505 will be good. Yeah, okay, so that's it. So they both have their colors, and we also want this heading to be white, so I'm going to just target the H1 element and give it a color of white. Okay, so with that, the styling is over, but if you want to put in your own styling, you're welcome to do that. Let me compare it with the real one. Okay, here we had the color of the buttons white, so let's go ahead and fix that. So to fix that, I think we'll just put the color here, white, and for the increase button we will do same. Okay, so that's it. Or there is another way which we could do it. We could do it by making all the buttons to have text color of white. Yeah, text color of white, and so with that we don't need this here, and we don't need this here. Sorry, okay. Yeah, so we don't need it in the increase and decrease. We can just let it be in the reset button. Okay, so that's all for the styling. So now let's move to the most interesting part, JavaScript. So let's start by selecting our elements. So let's take a look over here. Let's link our JavaScript file first to the HTML file here by using a script tag, and the source will be app.js. Yeah, that's the source. So over to app.js, first we have to select our count, which is what we are going to be using to change the number, which is our count, which is present here, to change the numbers, and we are going to be selecting the buttons. So I'm going to count, I will name it counter. It will be document.query selector with the count. That's the counter, and the next will be the button. So const button equals to documents dot query selector So what I have done here is I just selected the div I selected a div which contains all the buttons. That is what I'll be selecting. Rather than selecting each and every of the buttons, I will just select the container, that's the div containing all the buttons, which has the class buttons. So that's what I'll be selecting, because what I want to use is event delegation. Rather than attaching events to each and every one of these buttons, I just want to have one event which is going to listen to all of these buttons as one. So that is possible using event delegation in JavaScript. So basically how it works is we just have to select this here, which is a container which contains all of these buttons. So I'll just say buttons dot add events listener, button dot add events listener, and the event we want to listen to is the click event. Okay, so it is going to take a callback function. It's going to take a callback function, and in order for us to check if it's working, let's just say console.log clicked. Okay, so I'll save this and I'll crack open the console. And here in the console, if we click any button here, we see it shows clicked. And if I click any of these, you will see the event has been attached to all of the buttons. Let me refresh. See, if I click on the plus button, it shows here clicked. The minus button, it increases to 2, and the reset button, you see. So if I click on any of the 3 buttons, it is going to work because we attach the events listener to the parent element. So indirectly, all the children will inherit this property from the parents. So here what we can do is just to choose each and every one of the buttons through their classes. So what I'll do is I'll say if event.target.classList contains increase, which is the first button. Then we want to let's just say console.log increase. So if I save that, you will see that if I click on reset, nothing happens. I click on, sorry, I made a mistake here. I think it should be contains. This E here is not supposed to be present. Sorry about that. So I think now it's going to work. So if I click here, you will see it clicked. If I click on this negative button, the same thing happens. But if I click on this positive button, which we selected here, you will see it now shows increased, and it also as well shows clicked because the click is still present here. But you will see that it is different from the others. It shows increase. So which means we are actually getting the event from this button right here. So I'll go ahead and copy this and I'll paste it 2 times for the 2 other buttons, and here I will just put the real thing and say if the event.target class list contains increase, then I want the count the text content, that's I want the text content of this count element to add, since we are dealing with numbers, so we can easily add it. So what basically this is doing is saying search for an element that is on click. If the element's target class list contains the class increase, then I want the counter's text to increase. I want the counter's text to increase. So basically if we save this and we click on this plus button here, you will see that we now have 1, and if I click again, we now have 2. But not for now, of course, the other buttons are not functioning, but this is functioning. So with this, you can also just pause the video and try to do for the minus button yourself, and come back and watch the solution with me. But if you still can't do it, don't worry, I will walk you through the process step by step. Okay, so let's continue. So the next, we are going to target the decrease button. So we just need to change this to decrease, and what we want to do is we want the text contents to decrease when we click the decrease button. So if I save that, you'll see here when we click the plus button, we increase the number, and when we click the decrease button, the number decreases. So we already have two buttons working. So what is left is the reset button. So what the reset button will do is the reset button is going to access the counter's text content, and it will just set it to 0. So with that, you will see that if we click the plus, sorry, there's an error. There's an error here. I don't know where it's coming from. What does it say? It says syntax error expected God. Okay, yeah, we forgot to close the div. Okay, that should fix it. And so here, there's another error. Okay, sorry, we forgot to change the class. I'm very sorry about that. Here it should be reset. Okay, so now it should work. Okay, perfect. It's now working. So if we click on the plus button, we see that we increase the counts. If we click on the minus button, we reduce the counts, and if we click on reset, it goes back to 0. So for now, all our buttons are working. So since all our buttons are working, we already have a working counter app. But now we want to make it in such a way that when we have negative values, it should show red, and when we have positive values, it should show green. And when we reset to 0, it should be in white. So how can we achieve this? We can achieve it by creating a function which is going to check. So I'm just going to create a function below, a function which I'm going to call it checker. And this check function is not going to receive any parameters. It's not going to receive any parameters. So here I will just check if counts, dot text content is greater than 0, then if count.text content is greater than 0, then I want count.style. Oh, sorry about this. The style.color should be equal to, I think it's equal to green, right? So I'm going to say the green color should be hash 9AFFF00. So if the text content, which is this number, if the counter's text content, which is this number, is greater than 0, then we want the color of the text to be white. So let's just go ahead and test this. I will save it, and if we click, oops, it's not working. Okay, we haven't called our function yet. So let's go ahead and call our function. So I'll just copy it and right here, paste the function. So we will call our function here, the checker function. So once we call it, we refresh the page, and if we add, still not working. Sorry about that. This here wasn't counter. It was yeah, it was counter. I think that's, it should be style.color equals to I think this hex here 1 2 3 4. Okay, yeah, the hex was wrong, so I need to put 4 here. Alright, so now it should work. So okay, that's it. So you see we are now in positive numbers and it's green, but here you will see that even if we reset and go below, it still shows green because we haven't specified for the others. So here I'm going to specify it for the others. Let me just call the function here as well, and I'm going to call the function here as well too. So I'll copy this and I'm going to paste it here. So here it will check if the counter is less than 0, then we want the color to be hash 8E 0505. I think that's correct. Okay, yeah. So if we go below, you will see it shows negative, and if we go above, it shows green. So we now need to specify for 0 and say if, okay, so for 0 we can just say counter.style.color equal to so basically what will happen here is it is going to check this first condition. If the counter's text is greater than 0, then the color will be green, and if that's not the case, it is going to come to the second. If the counter's text is less than 0, then it is going to be red, but if that's not the case, then it is going to come to the third. But now what will happen here is in every situation it is going to come to the third. Let me show you. If I refresh and I go here, you see it's not even working. This is because we haven't specified, we haven't taken a decision here to make this function to return once the decision has been found. So what is happening here is this gets executed and it happens, this also gets executed and it happens, then this now gets executed, which overrides everything here. So what we need to do is we have to use return statements to ensure that if this is the correct one, if the counter is greater than 0, then it should turn the number to green, and the function should exit, so it will not get below here. So how we can do that is just by putting return here. Yes, return, and here also we put the return. Yeah, so that's it. So if the counter's text content is greater than 0, then it will set the color to green and return. And if it is not, then it is going to skip this and come to the second. If the counter's text content is less than 0, then it is going to set the color to red and it is going to return. If not, it is going to go down here, which will eventually get executed, which means it is at 0 and the color will be set to white. So let's save that, and over here I will refresh, and so if I press on the plus button, you see it turns green. If I press on the minus button, it turns red, and reset turns white. But we have a bug here. You will see that we have to go to 2 before it actually changes. It's happening. We had to put this after the counter has been incremented. Sorry about that. We have to put it after the counter has been incremented. Okay, we had to put them after the counter has been incremented in order for us to get, so now I think it should work properly. So if we increase, now you see it works properly, and if we reset to 0, it becomes white, and when we go to the negative, it becomes red. We can reset back to 0, so you can see that's our counter up there and it's ready. So we have the plus button. Let me increase Okay, so we now have our counter app. So if I click, it increase it. When it goes above 0, it becomes green. Reset, when it's at 0, it is white. And we can decrease. When we decrease, it becomes less than 0, it is red. So that is it, guys. That is our counter application. So if you have any questions, you can just post them in the comment below and I'll get to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.